It's finally time to take our percents and apply them to word problems. These word problems, some of them are going to be really straightforward and easy to work out, and then some of them are going to be trickier. For several of them, there's more than one way to work them, so I'll show you both ways. First example, we've got a university that employs 42% of parents. So I am going to highlight that because that's going to be important, 42% of parents, because it's a number. That word of has come up a lot with percents. And if the number of parents employed by the university is 168, so there's another important part. There's the word is, very important for percents, and a number. I want to know how many parents are in the school district. So one way to do this is that our trustee is over of equals percent over 100. I see the word is 168, so that's going to go in the is spot. 42 is going to go in the percent spot, and 100 always goes underneath the percent. So I'm looking for the of. So I have my nice ratio set up. As always, I'm going to cross multiply. So that's going to give me 42x is equal to 16,800. Oops. So 16,800. I'm going to divide both sides by 42. And I'm going to get x is equal to 400 as my answer. I do want to check and make sure the answer makes sense. Way back at the very beginning of our time together, we talked about how we need to check and make sure our answer makes sense. And this is one of those times. The school district, the university only has 42% of the parents. So 42% is 168. So the whole thing should be bigger. It should be 400. So we're looking for a bigger number, so that makes sense. I'm going to work this same problem, another method. I'm going to leave the answer up here because the answer is 400. So there's no reason to get rid of that. But this time I'm going to work it writing a number sentence. So I've got 42% I'm going to write as a decimal. When I use my number sentences, I change this to a decimal. The is over of method, I don't have to worry about it. So pros and cons. I'm going to multiply this. So 42% times, I'm going to multiply it because I see of. So 42% of, and the parents is what I'm looking for. 42% of the parents is my equal sign. Of means multiply. Is the equal sign in your number sentences. So 42% of the parents is 168. So this is 42% or 0.42 or 42 hundredths times x. So I'm going to divide both sides by this 0.40. Oopsies. Both sides by this 0.42. This is my point there. And I type that in my calculator, and that also comes out to be 400. So it gives me the same answer. Two methods, both of them work. We're going to see that two methods, again, can be used for the next problem. To save us a little bit of time, I'm not going to work both methods out for this next one. So Kelly bought a bicycle, and a year later she sold it for 20% less. And she sold it for $144. What did she pay originally for this? At some point in this, we're going to have to worry about subtracting, and I just like to get it done with at the beginning. So she sold it for 20% less. That's another way of saying 80% of the total cost, because the original cost is 100% is the whole thing, and I'm going to subtract 20% to give me 80%. So 144 is 80% of the original cost. And that's really important. We needed to get down to understanding that is and of, because I don't actually really see the words is and of in this problem. I see the word for a lot. So we got to kind of have to work to find out where the is and of are to make either our number sentence or our is over of equals percent over 100. Either case, we've got to find them. So what I say, and I'll write it up there for us, is we would say that this 80%, or let's say a better way, 144 is 80% of the original cost. Now that I see that, I can write my number sentence. So that's what I'm going to come back and do now. I'm going to say 144 is 80%. I'm going to write as this decimal. 80% of means multiply the original cost. So 144 is 80% of the original cost, written out in a number sentence. I'm going to divide both sides by 0.80, or the 80%, to solve for x. And when I do that, I get 180. So the answer to this is $180. So there's my answer. All right. On to the next one. This one's different because I'm looking for the percent here, and we haven't had to do that yet. So far, we've just been given the percent, asked either the is or the of as our question. So we've got a calculator originally cost $120. It's discounted to $90. What is the percent decrease? So this decrease right here, that's going to tell me at some point I have to subtract. I'm going to be subtracting somewhere in this problem. Two different places. I'll show you both of them. So one way we can say, all right, let me figure out what the decrease actually was. So 120 minus 90 is 30. So go ahead and subtract at the beginning. So I've got my $30 decrease. Now, I know a percent is the same thing as is over of, because we've said before is over of is equal to percent over 100. So I'm going to take this smaller number 30 and divide it by 120. The percent is dividing. Remember, it literally means per 100 or divided by 100. So I can divide here. So 30 over 120 gives me 0.25 or 25%. And it did ask me for the percent decrease, so I'm going to write it as a percent. So that's one way we could work this problem. If we didn't want to do our subtracting at the beginning, that's fine. Some point I have to subtract though. I could just start off straight with my numbers 90 and 120. For the same reasons I just explained, I'm going to divide 90 by 120. I type that in my calculator and it gives me 75 hundredths, or 0.75, or 75%. All mean the same thing. Now that's not the final answer because I haven't subtracted. So this was, I'm going to tell you to be a little wary. If you don't subtract at the beginning, don't get happy and just circle your answer. Remember, at some point you have to subtract. $90 is 75% of 120. I want to know what the discount was, like what that decrease was in between. So now I'm going to subtract 100%, like we did on the problem before, minus the 75% to give me my final answer of 25%. And this is my final answer, the 25%.